Okay, I think we're successful in broadcasting ourselves live from various places. Welcome, hello. My name is Vanessa Rigaux, and I'm the artistic director of the Montreal Clown Festival, le Festival des Clowns de Montréal. I would like to welcome you warmly to our roundtable discussion that is part of this year's festival, New Recipes, Nouvelles Recettes. As you may know, Montreal is currently in a month-long return to isolation. So the city of Montreal is in a red zone. And as we gather around our computers, we are staying safe and we are very happy to connect with you wherever you may be. This Zoom discussion was planned with an intention that this could possibly be one of the first of a series of discussions around clown teachings, mentors and mentees, and passing down knowledge of this very ancient and important art form. I'm just gonna see a message here from my stage manager. She said it's all good. As it's our first time, we're going to be very forgiving and we hope that our connections are all right, but so far so good. And this is just very exciting for us. Before I introduce our participants, I do want to acknowledge that our festival is being broadcast from Montreal, which is known in the Mohawk language as Chichoge, or broken in two because of the way that the river breaks around the island. Montreal Clowns acknowledges that our festival takes place on unceded Indigenous territories. Chichoge is historically known as a gathering place and a place of creativity, storytelling, community, and creativity for many First Nations and Indigenous cultures, including, but not limited to, Ganigahage, Mohawk of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat, the Abenaki, and the Anishinaabe Algonquin peoples. We respect the past, the present, and the future of Indigenous peoples in Chichoge, and we stand in solidarity with our Indigenous members of the community and beyond. Our roundtable discussion, Knowing Pochinko, brings together John Turner and 4 students, 5 including me, but I'm going to try and just moderate, together to discuss the teachings and the learnings of Pochinko style clowning. We welcome to the first discussion, and again, hopefully this continues, maybe in the form of a podcast, depending on how much money we get. Hopefully there's some funders who are like, this is a great idea. So I'm so truly honored to bring these people into the conversation today, and I'll let the speakers introduce themselves. I will just mention that Jed is joining me here from Montreal, from his own home, of course, but he's also a co-conspirator and collaborator on the Montreal Clown Festival, alongside of a 4-person artistic team that includes Katie Wadham, who was our coordinator for this panel. So thank you so much, Katie. And Dana Ray Ivasiak, who is our stage manager on this project, and as well as Josiane Coteau, who's our communications coordinator for the company. So we couldn't have done this without this great team. So thank you so much. And I'll leave it to you guys to introduce yourself. So if you want to start, Jed, I know I've already done the Montreal introduction, so.
Sure. Well, as mentioned, I'm Jed Tomlinson. I'm a Chichoge or Montreal-based clown teacher and director. I've been doing a lot for the past 20 years or so. I've been working particularly on collective collaboratives and new creations has been my focus. And in 2010, I landed at the Clown Farm and sort of had my aha moment of this is this is the thing for me. Since then, I've spent the last 10 years training primarily with John, as well as with Mike Kennard and Karen Hines. and have done an awful lot of teaching at a variety of universities, and was able to go down to New Mexico and work with Elsa a little bit, which was wonderful. I've also on the panel is Jacqueline, who's been my primary clown partner. We've done over almost 100 shows together, and I think I've now created 5 full-length clown shows that have toured fairly extensively over the last 10 years. So that's me.
Jacqueline, would you like to introduce yourself?
Certainly. Hi, my name is Jacqueline. My pronouns are she, her, and I am coming to you from Mohkinstsis or Calgary in Treaty 7 territory, the traditional home of the Blackfoot people. And yeah, I am thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me. I just finished doing an MFA in theater, looking specifically at the intersection of clown and using a feminist lens and how those two things intersect. And I teach clown, and as Jed mentioned, we have created some clown shows together. Jed and I first began working together at the Clown Farm, and we've been really fortunate to spend a lot of time there. More than we probably were invited to. Working as artists in residencies, residents creating shows there, and being mentored in all kinds of ways. Yeah, and I currently I'm going to be teaching clown and mask for Ambrose University in the upcoming year, and going to figure out how to do that in a socially distant way. So it's exciting times.
Thank you, Jacqueline. It's so awesome to have you here. I'm going to go around in what I'm seeing. I don't know what you're seeing in your kind of squares, but Elsa, you're the next one for me.
Thank you, Vanessa, and I'm really happy to be here. I'm Elsa Menendez, and I am here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is part of the traditional lands of the Tiwa people. We have 20 pueblos, 3 Apache nations, and the Navajo Nation as well here in New Mexico. And I'm a mixed bag. I am a theater artist with Tricklock Company, and I have been for the last 20 years, and also currently a field representative for U.S. Senator Martin Heinrich, and also do work with various leadership facilitation teams. And I first encountered John and Mike Kennard more than that, in 1992, so however many years ago that is, watching one of their shows, and then spent a good almost 20 years trying to find a way to bring that work to New Mexico. And we finally did it in 2011, and then that led to me going and training on the farm in 2016. And I bring the work of clown in non-traditional ways into the work that I do in all of my areas, both as a performer and also as a facilitator. And I work a lot with children, and I'm a co-founder of a circus arts program here in town, which is how we got Jed to come back after being part of our theater festival and teach at that circus institution, what we call Circo Latino. So that's me.
So nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, next to my square, even though, you thought maybe I was going to save you for last, but John Turner.
I'm next. Okay.
You're next.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thanks for having me. It's so great to be here with these wonderful colleagues. My name is John Turner, he, him. I am broadcasting from the traditional lands of the Odawa and Potawatomi, and more recently Ojibwe. And I'm right here on the Clown Farm. I'm the artistic director of the Clown Farm, formerly known as the Manitoulin Conservatory for Creation and Performance, formerly known as the Clown Farm. And here on Manitoulin Island, we've been here since 2002. I'm also the co-artistic director of Mump and Smoot. My partner, Michael Kennard, is the other co-artistic director, and Karen Hines, our longtime director since the very beginning of everything we've done live, and that's, I don't know, thousands of shows maybe since 1987. And what else? We've performed around North America and major regional theaters and in Israel, and taught this style of clown training primarily here on the farm at Equity Showcase in Toronto. Before that, at our studio, the Mump and Smoot studio in Toronto. Before that, and for about the last 18 years at Laurentian University as a regular sessional instructor there. And what else? Just stop me, because I can keep going.
Okay, I'll stop you if you're. We're going to get back to more of your work anyway, and it's an honor to be here. We're glad that we're all coming together to discuss this work that we've been introduced by you, and that's directly from Pochinko himself. And it's really important work that has opened up all of our eyes and our world. So thank you. Okay, Miriam, you're up.
Hi, everyone. Mon nom, c'est Miriam Cusson. I'm presently in Sudbury, Ontario, which is the traditional lands of the Atikamekw, Anishinaabe, and as well as the Wahnapitae First Nation. This is a Robinson Huron Treaty territory, and I'd like to take a moment to recognize and thank the multiple generations of First Nations people who have been stewards of this land and will continue to be stewards of this land. I'm a bilingual theater creator, actor, director, writer, as well as a literary artist. That sounds a little pretentious, but it's just easier to say than to list all of the different things in that field. And I also teach at Laurentian University. I'm a professor there in the Programme de Théâtre. I teach at Ottawa University as well in their new conservatory program. And I have been thinking about clown and dissecting clown and doing clown since 2001, when I first met John at Laurentian University, and have been working with the Clown Farm. So the MCCP, the Manitoulin Conservatory, formerly known as the Clown Farm, but also now the Clown Farm, since its very beginning, I guess. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation, Vanessa.
Awesome. Okay, so here we all are. John, you have taught over 1,000 babies, as we call them. And I'm going to make a bit of an assumption that a lot of people who are watching this have some interest in Pochinko, have maybe heard of it before, but I also realize that maybe this is just something totally new, and that's something that the Clown Festival tries to do, is introduce new styles and forms, and not new, but different, and try and diversify everybody's kind of understanding of clowns. So in order to help kind of break into a little bit of a deeper discussion about Pochinko, we have designed some rapid fire questions to to try and kind of piece together as a group some of the beginnings and some basics about what we can tell you about Pochinko style clowning. Are you guys ready?
So ready. Do we have a buzzer?
Your hand, I guess. Okay, so everybody can answer, and I hope that everybody does answer, but you're not required to. First question, who was Richard Pochinko? It could be one word, it doesn't have to be a full answer.
Richard Pochinko was a Manitoban, Polish descent, who got very interested in theater at a young age, and was at one point, I believe, an assistant stage manager on the original production of Hair in Toronto, who found his way, and interests led him to clown work. He eventually formed the Theatre Resource Center in Ottawa originally. It eventually moved to Toronto. There you go. And he was I would call him a clown visionary in terms of developing a style of training that drew on many traditions and many schools of thought. But he tried to call it Canadian clowning. I'm not sure I agree with that, because the whole thing is, the whole point of it is the clown is an individual. So it's you're not defined by your country. What else? Do you want anything about Baby Clown? Why? Okay, Baby Clown is, it's called his
Stop. Richard Pochinko only. First question. Does
That was the first rapid fire answer.
And after getting a taste of how John teaches, we start to tell him. Does anybody else have anything to add about who Richard Pochinko is?
I just add, I had the extraordinary opportunity last summer to go and look through some of the archival files that were left after Richard's creative partner, Ian Wallace, passed away. And we talk a lot about Richard in the context of him as a teacher and a creator of this style of clown training. But I think it's also worth noting that Richard and Ian were both creators in their own right, and they created a lot of really interesting theater. There's a lot of reviews and photos and that type of thing in the archives that were so fascinating to look at, and to think about both of them as queer artists creating work in the 1980s, and what contribution that also had to Canadian theater.
Thank you.
Yeah.
About sums it up. Okay, let's move on. Let's keep on piecing the pieces together, layering it on. Where did it all start for you? It being your connection and your introduction to Pochinko style clowning.
It started for me in Whistler. I was working on a show for the Olympics in 2010, and I was in Whistler, and I had been working for the Green Fools, which is a great company based in Calgary, and and I had kept seeing these postings, and finally in January, February, working on this show, I was like, well, I really want to write a grants, and I really want to go to this thing, and I'm going to write my first grants. And then I was like, oh, if I'm going to write a grant, I need somebody to tell me that I got into the school. And so I reached out to John and said, hey, I'm super interested. And I got 2 words back, which just said, you're in. And 5 months later, I was doing another show for Magnetic North Festival, and was actually sharing the same theater as Mump and Smoot. It was the first time I got to meet Mike and John, and then went for a 16-day course and stayed for a month and a half, and never looked back. So,
Origin stories, anyone else? Miriam?
Yeah, I was actually on tour with another theater production, or with a theater production in France, and I got an email from my program director, because I was still doing my studies at the time, saying that we were going to add a clown class to the curriculum, and I was pretty angry about that because I didn't really understand what anything was. I also had a really crippling fear of clowns, so I kind of complained about that, and then my program splurged so that I could go see a show at Canadian Stage with John Turner and Mike Kennard. The show was called Flux. And at one point in the show, there were 4 audience members that showed up. They were a little bit, I think, inebriated and slightly belligerent. And the clowns stopped the show and just kind of signaled to the tech and started the whole thing over. And when we got to the part where it was interrupted, they kind of turned their flashlights onto the audience members and said, and this is when you assholes came in, and the crowd roared, and I was hooked. I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. So so followed a class the following January, because I had to. But yeah, Loved it. Yeah.
Do you remember that, John? I think Elsa, you had something, and I'm not hearing you, John. You're muted, I think.
You're going to answer that memory?
Yes, I remember. Yes, I remember.
I will follow up with a quick story too. I mentioned in my introduction that I first encountered Mump and Smoot in 1992, and I'll just add that I was a 24-year-old associate artistic director of a youth theater called Oddfellows Playhouse, and we went to see Caged and Inferno, not the kids, but a group of adult artists, and I went to see the Caged Inferno back to back with a dinner break in between, and while I was, had been exposed to lots of different forms of theater and styles of physical theater and some clown, nothing compared to that experience of Caged Inferno. And sort of similarly, I was just sort of gobsmacked by the capacity within a nanosecond to go to experience clown neutral almost as an audience member, to go from, hysterical laughter to like despair and disgust and panic, and to have that switch flipped so many times. And it just kind of worked its way in and lived in me for forever. And it took me a while to get back around to connecting with the actual work myself, but it was a seed that was planted that was really powerful. And yeah, so that's my, and then again, 2011, finally got John and Mike to come to New Mexico to our International Theater Festival, Revolutions International Theater Festival, and then finally made it to Manitoulin in 2016.
Awesome.
Terrified, but it was good.
Jacqueline, what's your story?
I first encountered Pochinko clown when I was in theater school. I had, in my third year of the BFA acting program at the University of Alberta, Jan Henderson, another Pochinko clown teacher, taught a clown unit, and it was quite revelatory for me at the time because 3 years of theater school had really made theater not very fun anymore. And I was trying so hard to get it right that I just kept getting it wrong. And so a clown all of a sudden was this huge wave of relief because I could fail. And Jan's ability to celebrate failure is extraordinary. And so, yeah, it was transformative for me. It felt this like rush of breath and joy back into my life. And then the minute I finished theater school, I asked John if I could come and be in a boot camp, even though I hadn't done baby. And he said yes. And so I did it backwards. I did boot camp and then I went to the farm and did baby.
Oh, I wish I said that.
I believe you said only for very advanced students. So
yes.
Yeah.
I'm just going to jump in. I told you I'm not going to shut up, but and be the moderator that I'm supposed to be. But I have a similar story of going through theater school. I was at Gaulier and had done clown there and had gotten so many zeros that I wasn't even going to pick myself back up. But John came to Winnipeg, where I'm from, and I was living at the time. And when somebody comes to Winnipeg, you just do the thing. It doesn't matter who it is. So, so I was like, John, sure, I'll take this class, and it was awesome. And then I went to Manitoulin so many times, and got lost a few times, and then survived a storm and haven't been back since. But I intend to.
Get ready to cut me off. I guess I'm next, eh?
Yeah. So, what's your story? How did it begin?
Get ready to cut me off. So I was over 30 and was doing a lot of. A friend had finally said get into Second City improv classes. So I went and started doing Second City improv classes where I met Karen and Mike. They were both already well established in the improv sort of scene in Toronto, and I sort of worked my way up in the classes over a year or so. And after about a year, we were all in the same level class, the top level, and Mike was in an improv troupe and a sketch troupe, and they had internal issues and both split up, had split in half, and something like this, anyways. And they were both sort of looking to fill their numbers again, and so I was a candidate. And Mike and I had done very well at that point in gibberish exercises in class together. We didn't really know each other that well. And so I went to his studio for a meeting, and with this new formation and Mike and I were the only ones that showed up. And so he said, "Hey, why don't we just do a duo?" And I was okay. So we decided to form a duo. And about 2 weeks later, he heard about this clown workshop, and this baby clown workshop with Richard Pochinko. And I said, I was absolutely disgusted. I went, I thought we were going to do comedy. And I was pretty upset about having to even considering. I said, what do we have to wear a red nose? And he said, probably. Anyways, so then Karen was also in our classes, and I was taking movement from Fiona Griffiths, who was the resident choreographer at Richard's studio. So was that a ding? I'm done?
No, so I texted you an audience question, but I didn't mean for you to be distracted.
An question in the middle of my rapid fire.
I didn't know you had your phone on. It's obviously not very rapid fire. Keep on going.
So Fiona Griffith says to me, "You should think about taking a class here." And I'm going, "In what?" I didn't even know it was Richard's school. And she said, "In clown." And I'm like, and then I went to Karen and I said, "Can you believe it? These idiots think we should do this clown workshop with this guy, Richard Pochinko." And she looks at me and she goes, "The guy's supposed to be a genius." So I went, "Oh, okay, that does it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it just to make you all happy. And then I'm going to reject it." Which turns out is kind of a principle, an underlying principle in the training is cynical benevolence. Be as cynical as you want, but try your best, and then you'll know what it is you're rejecting. So then I spent the next 5 years rejecting the work with 3 hit tours, Fringe Festival tours. And we had sort of decided to, well, if I'm going to do clown, we're going to take all the rules and we're going to do them so well and attack them and destroy them at the same time. And be subversive and flush them down the toilet, but doing the rules. That was the plan. And then as it turned out eventually, that actually is in essence what clowning is. So it was about 5 years before I would even call myself a clown. And that's how it was. Just pressure it was peer pressure that got me into it. I studied with Richard for the last 2 years that he was alive, and with Philippe Gaulier, but Richard was the visionary. Yeah.
Okay, so origin stories. Let's do one more rapid fire question. Let's keep this one rapid, okay? Let me ask you, what is the Clown Farm?
Beep.
Jacqueline.
It's the most magical place in the world.
And we're done.
Okay. All right. Let's go a little bit deeper then, because we started at the beginning. We started with some origin stories, and I think what's kind of coming up is the stories and the kind of what is the connection between what Richard Pochinko taught and what John teaches in a Pochinko style, and how we use it. So John, you mentioned that you were it's not something external, it's something internal. That was kind of under the Canada question or whatever. You were saying that it's not necessarily Canadian style, it's not it's something that's inside of you. So can we all kind of talk about a little bit of what we understand about that internal work that happens with Pochinko? You're up, John.
I'll start. I mean,
Yeah.
just slap me down. There needs to be a distinction between something that happens a lot is there's no distinction between training and professional expression, right? Artistic expression. So Pochinko, the thing about Pochinko style training is that it's a training style that encourages the expansion of your creative self. It encourages you looking at directions of yourself that you may otherwise have suppressed or whatever, and try to. He talked about living your full circle, so that's where the mask work comes in. You make 6 masks, looking at the 6 directions of yourself. So what comes out of that is up to you. So the technique isn't about how to do something. It's about exploring who you are, and that is in a clown context means it's in a creative context, means it's in a context of imagination as opposed to therapeutic or psychoanalytic. So you're encouraged to expand your creative playground. The thing that ultimately makes you a clown is not the clown workshop. That becomes how you take the work and use it. And you can use, because it's creative exploration at the introductory level, the baby clown workshop. At the end of the baby clown workshop, you're born as a clown. So that's why it's called that. No one ever calls it that. Richard didn't even call it that until you were in the class. He called it from mask to clown or clown through mask. But once you got there, it was you're going to be born as a clown, so it's baby clown. So that's how the work works, and that's why no 2 clowns are the same. So to say, are you a Pochinko clown? No, you're not, unless you're Richard Pochinko, right? Are you a Charlie Chaplin clown because you studied his technique and now you do that? No, you're not Charlie Chaplin. You're you. And this work is quite specifically geared towards bringing out for you to have a technique to explore who you are, and then ultimately, if you're into dream state stuff and weird surreal sort of aspects of it, and celebrating the mundane and the normal, and as well as the extremities of the self, then you start to enter into clown land, and then you get to define what clown is for yourself. Is that okay? I stopped.
Yeah, you're allowed to stop.
Okay.
Does anybody want to pick up on that? Because there's so many different aspects of. I'm glad you clarified that that style from "Are you a Pochinko clown?" Because I think that's really important. Also, just to say that there's so many layers, literally in Pochinko, baby clown. You're always using layers for the masks. You're layering on the directions. You're layering on colors. You're layering on different physicalities, but it's always coming from inside you. So just to kind of explain and riff maybe off of that process for the audience that might be interested. Does anybody have anything to say on that internalized layers coming out through the work?
We're all really polite tonight, eh?
Yeah.
No, I thought we were going to be jumping all over each other. One of the big aha moments for me when I did the work was I did, at that point I had done a ton of different training from Meisner to this to whatever, and this was the most honest work I had ever come across. It was the most honest way of performing. It was the most honest way of being in a conversation with a single other person or an audience, and I felt that it really helped give me the tools to be able to access and give myself the freedom to be honest myself in the way that I was performing, and in the way I was creating.
Wasn't there, in fact, something that I've heard from what Pochinko had maybe once said, is that you're unlocking yourself from this container that you're kind of in as a human?
I can speak to that. There was quite specifically a story. He woke up and explain this dream to Ian Wallace, who at the time was his romantic partner. They were creative partners much longer than they were romantic. By the time I met them, they were creative partners only. But Richard had this dream while he was studying at Lecoq. He was only there for about 4 or 5 months. That they were flying over the Earth in a spaceship, and that Ian was piloting, and Richard was just looking out the window, and he said, "Oh, look at those people! They're waving at us! They're waving at us! Take us down closer! Let's go see what they're doing." And so Ian drove the spaceship down to closer to Earth, and it turned out they weren't waving; they were trying to break out of these glass jars. And the glass jars represented creative prisons of creativity. They were all, and Richard woke up going, "That's our job. That's our job. We're here to break people out of their creative prisons." That was one of the inspiring aspects of the early stages of his development of Baby Clown and other work. It continued on with. Visitations by what has been referred to as a spirit guide, has been referred to as a dream, but was a character Richard called John Smith, and who was 8 feet tall and appeared at their bed, at the foot of their bed, and did all this stuff. So these are the question often comes up: what is the source? What is the source? The source is Richard Pochinko, and in the arts. Throughout the history of humanity, in the arts, inspiration has come from many, many sources. And the bottom line is Richard's interpretation of whatever his experience was, and his desire and his passion to engage in creative activity, and to teach and to formulate. His genius or his vision was the source of it. To me is I don't care. I care enough not to care. What matters to me is the profundity of the impact that the work has on the individual as a rule. But it's not everybody's cup of tea.
I'm gonna stop raising my hand. Just pop in.
Come on in.
I just wanted to add that because of the way that John and Jed have already started to talk about this form of freeing, of creative freeing, that is for me what makes it so adaptable, beyond just the idea of performance, and it's that dynamic of diving inward and journeying through these suggestions that are developed by Pochinko and then adapted and flow through the lineage of John and others, that we get into the space personally, that then dives us into this dynamic relationship with others that is so honest, as Jed was referring to. And for me, what's so rich, among many other things, is that there is this that clown as a whole, and then with this very unique specific these unique specific access points that Pochinko offers, has a way of disarming our patterns and disarming our resistance to change, and then developing these very visceral relationships, both internally and externally. And those skills, and what comes of that exploration, which is all grounded in, from my perspective and from what I hold on to from my time on Manitoulin with John and the team, that's all grounded in this premise of love and magic. Then those skills can be applied in various areas, right? You can bring them to your teaching about performance. You can bring them to your conversations with women leaders about vulnerability and power and the capacity to be both. You can bring them into spaces like business settings and say, yeah, we can keep talking about how to make your business more efficient, or we can make some contact here and see what comes of that. And so there's this beautiful evolution that I think happens that can be based in creating performance, and it can also inform and expand in a lot of different directions. And that's what's so powerful and magical to me. The experiences of going through Baby Clown are unlike anything I've ever been through in my life. And I did it at a sort of more advanced age, right? I did it in my late 40s. And it was an extraordinary bearing and opening, and the ramifications still are revealing themselves, many years later or years later. It's just an extraordinary opportunity to do some breaking free, if that made any sense.
Could I make a suggestion? Could we just speak about come back to the training, to this idea of Baby Clown and what it is for some of the people that perhaps haven't or don't know what it is? Is that okay?
Of course.
Just to kind of talk about the bases, the colors and the masks, and how all of that comes together. Oh, I don't want to do it. You can.
Well, I think you've just oh, you've muted yourself. So classic, Miriam, just can't say anything.
Do you want me to go? Shall I go?
Yeah, I would prefer. Thank
you. Yeah. So basically what you do in Baby Clown, apart from having exercises in breathing and allowing what's actually going on emotionally and in communication to actually go on, even just with the breath and through the eyes. There's a great quote from one of Karen Heinz's plays, the movements of the soul carried on the breath through the eyes, and that's what clown, for me, that's what clown performance is. So there's general stuff like that, but what you really, the juice happens when you start in the color work, and you do this whole series. You use the 7 colors of the visible light spectrum: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, and you focus on each one individually and become the color through a physicalization and a visualization process. And you come across, you develop worlds and a costume and blah, 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 all of this in paintings for each of the 7 colors. And that equips you, gives you a different relationship with color, as opposed to something that you see outside of yourself and how you feel about it. Oh, I feel like wearing a blue pineapple shirt tonight. Instead of that, it's more, what is your experience as the color? Who are you as a color? So my orange is different from Jed's orange, is different, is more like Miriam's yellow. Whatever. There's no. Each person has their own individual experience of what a color is when they become it. It's a very different approach to color. And then with the masks, you make the masks with your eyes closed. It's clay. You do a whole physicalization, visualization thing. You come around to your clay, you close your eyes, and you take the feeling in your body and put it into the clay. You're not trying to make a face. You're just taking the feeling in your body and putting it into the clay and moving it around till it feels like it's done. That's sort of the basic process for 6 masks. They're slightly different depending on which mask you're on. There are very specific exercises with each mask. That gets paper mache. Then you take the color work and you use, again, a lot of the work is done eyes closed. The actual painting of the mask is done with your eyes open, but you make a map for your painting with your eyes closed. So that's and these masks then technically represent, yeah, there's yes, it's all science, but it's just straightforward science. Those masks represent your internal universe, if you want, the directions of your internal universes. They're like light lampposts lighting up your creative playground. So you have an innocence and an experience for each mask. People talk about child and adult, but it's more about a feeling, and that's innocence and experience. In part because, anyways, I can get pretty specific here. So each of these 6 characters has a childhood, if you want, and an adulthood, and you discover all elements and fractions of what their experience and the combine of their experience is, and the combination, the clown, if you think of the self at the center of a sphere, and these masks are guideposts delineating the universe of your creativity. The clown can be everywhere and anywhere at any given point in time. Your clown can be any combination, and within that, it's just a paradigm, a structure for the creative exploration of your universe. It's one paradigm, and it's beautiful the way it works. So your clown can be anywhere within that. It can be 20% of one, 3% of another, 60% of yellow, et cetera, and that then becomes the playing, the experience, and the playing of those masks. The better you know your masks, the brighter the light, the larger your playing field. So does that cover it pretty much? Does that give a pretty good idea? At the end, you're basically combining them all. You go through a big final ritual, which is really fun. And you find your clown as the thing that exists between the masks.
That's the story behind the mask. And I think that's what I was originally saying about all of the layers of this work, is that there's so many layers to kind of get through. And what Elsa was just mentioning too about making contact. I mean, after the mask work is over and after the initial baby clown stage has been found, it's still lifelong work that you can do. There's an infinite number of imaginings of your stories and where you can be placed. So that's what makes it so relatable, I think, in life, as you were saying, Elsa, and even in what you were saying, Miriam, too, in the different ways that you're applying it, whether it's teaching and other creative aspects of your life. Making contact is one of the exercises that is a part of this work. And there are many exercises as well that we won't, go into all of them, but I don't know, making contact, I just kind of got stuck on that. Does anybody have any stories to talk about that initial making contact? Jacqueline?
Yeah, I would just anecdotally share that this summer I directed a piece of theater that was to take place in the outdoors, a piece of children's theater, and families were observing it from a socially distanced distance. And I used making contact, like I always do with my cast on the first day of rehearsal, as an immediate way to create ensemble. But we kept coming back to it throughout our rehearsal process, because when audience feels so far away, that practice of breathing and listening just feels even more vital than it does when the audience is close. It's always vital, but yeah, it really struck me how useful a tool it is. Even when people are wearing masks and sitting far away and it feels like connection isn't happening, making contact can remind you that it still is, and that breathing can still happen even in this weird world in which we are living.
What is making contact? Should we go over that? Miriam, do you want to tackle this one?
Oh, sure. So we invite, I'm going to say students, to leave the room and then to come back in and to make contact with each person in the room. We do invite students to kind of take their time and to connect properly with each individual. I had the opportunity to do this in just this August. It was a wonderful experience and a heartbreaking experience. Wonderful because it kind of gave purpose again. I was like, oh yes, this is why we do theater, to be with people in a room. And all of my students had their masks. So making contact became something completely different and very, very intense for them and very intentional. And it was awful because I had to leave that room at one point and come back to teach in front of a screen. Yeah, and the purpose is to try, and this is an exercise that we find in many different practices and in different forms of theater in one form or another, to kind of strip away all of the extra artifice from the student or performer that's presenting themselves. And it's really hard to do that and to kind of offer yourself up like that, because it is a state of vulnerability automatically. I'm always fascinated at what's kind of happening for people after the exercise is over, because we do have a moment where we share what's going on. But I'm fascinated at the intensity of emotions. People might feel like they're being judged, or that they're in a position of strength, or in a position of vulnerability. It's really something. It's very revealing.
Thank you for sharing that. I just want to mention that it's 10 to 8, and I think we'll go until 8:30 if that's okay with you guys, but we will try and take some questions at the end too. And I want to kind of bring back the conversation. We can talk about anything. We know this. We kind of set it up as we're going to see where this goes, but I do want to kind of bring it back to teaching. And so I think there's been a bit of interest from the audience, at least from the questions that are coming in from me, about the place and the farm. What is the farm? What is the place? And I think I don't want to speak for all of us, but I know that the farm is a very magical, special place that enhances, I think, the teachings that are coming out, because you're surrounded by nature and whatnot. So if there's any connections between the land and the space and the teachings that you have experienced, might be interesting to talk about that.
I'll maybe take this one quickly and then hand it over to someone else. The openness of the space and the welcoming atmosphere is a really rare and precious thing, I think. And that's true in what was once the barn and what is now the studio and the fields and the secret fields. And you should totally come to this place if you haven't yet. And I feel like it's une place qui est propice, so something that is a place that is welcoming to kind of allow for abandonment, which is really, I think, the purpose of this work. It creates a space where the individual or the duo or a group can kind of let go of everything that exists outside of themselves and kind of focus in. It's that kind of place. Yeah.
I think too the lineage of the students and the community that's been built up over the years has a big effect on it too. I mean, I think that what John and the assistants that are doing that are doing the first baby clown of the summer instill that to begin with, but then that feeling of abandonment and of being able to disconnect from the rest of the world, to really be in that place, is really continued by the students that are coming back, the people that are coming back to work. It's something that just becomes almost ingrained every time you're heading back there. It's the closer you get, the more you seem to just sort of shed everything else that was back in the city or wherever you're coming from. And once you can finally walk onto the property, it's like, I'm here now. Yeah, I think the community has a big effect on that as well.
Nice.
And your tasks are to kind of eat, sleep, and create, which is, as an artist and a creator, almost always impossible. So
It's really focused, except for when we go on, big hikes.
Oh.
And well, I mentioned that I got lost, but I went and I got lost on Misery Bay, and but I made art out of it, so it was all fine in the end.
Yeah. It always astounds me how much the community over the years too holds together and continues. The people visiting friends that they met here in Germany or South America or Australia and all across the U.S. and Canada, and I just I always feel like I'm just the luckiest person in the world because the people that come here are just so awesome. And the association, I mean, it was all great in theory. Oh yes, in nature, and you have the chi, and you've got that, and you can process, and you can go out for a walk in a field or in the woods and process, and it does actually help because it's pretty intensive work. And but it actually happens, and it just always astounds me every time. And all of these people on this panel have all contributed enormously to that feeling, to that awareness, and that presentation of what it is that we do here. It's not to say I've taught in downtown studios. I've taught on Northern Reserves. I teach here at the Bajamajig Theatre Group, a First Nation theatre company on the island. I've taught at universities, et cetera, and everywhere the work works. There's no question about it. I learned it in the downtown Toronto studio. So, but it is an awesome opportunity to be here in the under the stars, under the Milky Way, with the fireflies in the field, and it's just a phenomenal way to be able to process the type of work that we're doing, the internal work that we're doing here.
I think that the community that you speak about, which is, starts here with us, but is literally in the thousands now. Like you said, you stopped counting how many babies you birthed after 1,000, which was about 3 years ago. And I just wanted to know also, while this is a very special place that you've built, and you travel and teach as well, who are some other teachers that are teaching in other regions? Because there's other there's other teachers that are doing things in their own interpretation of it, which is what we kind of want to talk about with passing down of information. Everybody teaches a little bit differently.
Well, I mean, we've already mentioned Jan Henderson, who's a wonderful woman and teaches a slightly different version and sort of a three mask version. And Jacqueline would speak to that more accurately than I would, having experienced it. David Murray Smith teaches in Vancouver. I believe he's still teaching there. He lives on one of the Gulf Islands now, I think. But he's a wonderful man who teaches has also made certain alterations in the structure of the workshop and stuff. It's what Richard wanted. There's actually Jed has taught it. I mean, I'm just referring to Full Baby Clown. There's dozens of teachers. I've taught probably 80 teachers to the basis of the work and the exercises in a sort of a teacher's perspective course that I teach. And different people use different parts of it, different segments of it. But the full-on baby, there's a woman in the United States that's teaching it, Donna. I'm struggling with her last name, I'm afraid. I hope she's watching and scolds me for losing her last name. Oblongata, I think, is actually what it is. I'm blanking. Of course, Mike Kennard teaches Baby Clown as well, et cetera, et cetera. And what Richard wanted, Hugh Parham has taught Baby Clown in Australia now 7 or 8 times at least. Over the last few years, wonderful teacher. Louise Gauthier teaches a version of it in Newfoundland. So there are people all over the place doing it. And Richard would have wanted the evolution of the work to continue, and it's only going to continue out of respect for what it was and where it's come from. I mean, Mike and I, we're 35-year creative partners, and we teach it differently. We have each person, again, every clown is individual, and every teacher is individual, and that's actually inherent in the work. There's no one way, really. I think there are general principles that are underlying it all, but I think it's awesome that the work is continuing on and being handed down and moving on. It's what was meant to happen. Richard's happy.
I think too that that sort of adds to the extension of that feeling of community. I know when Jed and I have been on the Fringe circuit and we've encountered other clowns from, well, they have an incredible community out in Vancouver, but people have trained in Pochinko style in other places. There's a feeling of connection and community just having that similar vocabulary. I had the opportunity to interview some really excellent, amazing clowns this past year, and using the vocabulary of Pochinko, the rules, even if it's slightly different, there's still like that recognition of the work and the feeling, the looking for a feeling that runs through it. So yeah, we're really, really fortunate in the ways that Richard's legacy has shaped the community across the country.
And Elsa, can I ask you what community building you're doing in New Mexico, and if things are kind of catching on there, or if you're using applications of it? I know you'd mentioned earlier about how you use it in all your work, which is really diverse, from being working with the US Senator, which we don't need to talk about politics right now, but curious.
Yes, please, let's not. Sure. I mean, I'll say that I don't teach or feel in any way qualified to teach any form of baby clown myself. And there's no one down here who's teaching it as a full experience in the way that I learned it. But elements of it work their way into a lot of the work that I do in Circo Latino, the youth circus program, as well as the work that we do as a theater company, Triclocs Theater Company, just in terms of bringing elements and exercises. My colleague and good friend and clown sister, Julie Hendren, who is our executive director of Tricloc Company, teaches many elements of clown at the University of New Mexico. And then for me, I bring it in again to everything, whether I'm facilitating a training with colleagues in the work office on diversity, equity, and inclusion, or whether I'm doing a retreat with women leaders from around the world. I'm always looking for the ways to bring in, and it flows naturally now, to bring in elements of the work. And even the work that I'm lately doing, the Kellogg Foundation has sponsored a cohort of leaders of color in New Mexico to learn a coaching style toward equity and transformation in New Mexico specifically. And I would say that there's a lot of overlap in the coaching training with Pochinko style clown training. So all of the colors and the directions that were referred to earlier, I feel like are comparable to the way that we look at pulling in parts of people, and also sort of expanding the view and kind of seeing things from different angles, whether you're seeing it from the angle of blue or you're seeing it from the angle of a direction. So it just infuses it's infused in everything, and there's overlap. It's really interesting.
Really universal, brings out the universal from yourself, from the individual.
Yeah, and it comes back again to trying to center around creative expansion and around honesty and authenticity, and that's why I think it's so vital and useful, particularly in the context of trying to make paradigm shifts in this country or in the world. We can't do that if we're not being truthful. We can't do that if we're not being heartful. We can't do that if we're not being brave. If we're not you know, again, disarming and confronting each other with our vulnerability and our power. And I feel like this work really allows for all those possibilities. I mean, watching somebody who's a CEO at an organization in England do making contact and go from being this very like, you know, put together, brilliantly articulate woman to struggling to actually hold space in that way, and then coming to this revelation about her willingness to open herself up to her staff in a whole new way. That's magic right there. And that's this work again, that's this lineage. So I feel like really privileged to have even the tiniest bit of contact with this work to be able to offer in service of revolution. You know?
I forgot one of the rapid fire questions, which I think would be neat to come back to, because in fact, making contact, and I also want to preface by saying, when I made contact for the first time, when I got to John, we just laughed and cried at the same time and couldn't stop. And it's like, there's something, because he started this, he's teaching us, and it's oh my God, it was just, I don't know what it was. It was a connection though, and it was profound, and I think it's super important to keep that up. But so making contact is in fact a clown rule, right? Okay, so clown rules are another thing, about another layer of this work. And I don't know how many rules there are now, because I believe there's been some that have been added perhaps, but I want to know from each of you, rapid fire, what is your favorite clown rule today? Okay, I'm just going to call on you because it's
know when to leave. Know when to leave.
Know when to leave. Jackie?
Jacqueline.
Jacqueline, sorry.
Okay. Get yourself off.
Get yourself off.
It's
Jed?
not a hard one.
Believe.
Elsa?
Break all the rules and get away with it.
Miriam?
If I'm going to be honest, break all the rules is definitely my favorite. But yeah, be honest.
I like surfer la vague, because I have been riding the wave this whole panel with you all. What's your least favorite rule?
Know when to leave.
Are you trying to say something?
It's the worst. It's the worst, because if you're failing miserably, you don't want to go. You want to stay till you till you get it right. And if it's going really well, you don't want to leave.
It's a hard one. Come on, least favorite rule. Don't be shy. Jed?
I'm over be zany. I'm over being zany. I think that's kind of a bullshit rule.
Ooh, calling your bullshit.
I would cut that out.
So where did the rules come from? Did you make up the rules? Did the students make up the rules? Did Richard Pochinko make up the rules? Muted.
Honest time now. So they used to be called things to remember. When Richard taught us and Ian Wallace taught us, they were called things to remember, and I think they were around 16 or 20, around in there. And
was be zany one of them, or did you add that after?
Soyez le fuck, baby. Mike and I have, just through 30 odd years or so, we've added a few. There's a lot of overlap in all the rules, and basically we changed them to being rules because they originally were called things to remember, and we just found that no one remembered them, so we made them rules. There's one rule that I out of respect for Richard. And to honor him, I've left it in. But I, like your Soyez le fuck, Miriam, I've crossed it out. and it's because it's problematic. It stops everything, and the thing about a clown is live, and it keeps moving and it keeps going, but it's present yourself. So people stop to present themselves and show us how they're feeling, and then it's like, and anyways, so I have a problem with that rule. There's my problem rule is present yourself.
Was that on purpose? What happened? My internet connection is not good right now, and we are coming to the end, but I'm just letting you know that I'm having a bit of problems, and I'm the host. So,
hey Vanessa.
Yeah.
There was a really great question from the Mind of a Snail folks. Can I address it?
Sure. I think yeah, from Jessica.
Yes, on my screen it says Mind of a Snail, so I'm not sure. If
Absolutely. Yeah, go for it. Let's take a question.
So the question is, Pochinko style clowning has been described as being influenced by certain indigenous ideas. Do you think Pochinko borrowed these ideas from a specific person or group? What's the role of appropriation in this? Which is a fantastic question. And I would refer everyone to this issue of Canadian Theatre Review that just came out. The whole issue is about clowning in Canada, but there's this excellent article that Sonia Norris put together, and she interviewed 4 Indigenous women, all of whom worked with Richard, about this very question. And she does such a great job of putting together like the complexities of it, and addressing, using their words, what their thoughts are about it. Because I do think it is something that comes up a lot as a question, and is something that like we as teachers have to grapple with and make sure that we have a sense of clarity around in terms of yeah, how we're using the work and how we're being responsible about talking about it in its relationship to Indigenous teachings. So I feel like there's not enough time to really dig into it extensively, but read the article.
It's a great article. The appropriation issue is basically, and I wouldn't pretend to paraphrase these incredibly powerful, smart, experienced women, two of whom I've worked with. But the general overall thing is that, for me, is there's a tendency towards seeking a power, and I think basically the bottom line is Richard was influenced by what could be called a dream, a hallucination, or a spirit guide, depending on what your paradigm is and what you believe in. I never once heard him say that he was a shaman, for example. There are a lot of people from the early days of Richard's work that actually consider it shamanistic clowning. It isn't. Clowning is what you do. What Richard's work was creative exploration, and he was influenced by the ideas or the philosophies all around the world. In my experience, having worked with Jungian therapists as well in this work, they are fascinated by it because there's so much. It's to me in that it's hugely drawn on Jungian principles. No, the overall impression is it couldn't be appropriation, and it isn't appropriation, and it isn't actually based on a specific human person coming and teaching Richard First Nations clown techniques. That actually never happened there. And it's really complex, though. It's really complex, but it's very popular and very romantic to fall into the mythology of the source, the stories of where it came from, and why it all is so magical and stuff. And Ian Wallace is often left out of a lot of the discussion. And in fact, as Richard's main guinea pig in the very earliest days, And as someone who continued and maintained the work and the facility itself, when Richard was often exploring what we might consider to be exploring wildly, which visionaries can often tend to do, Ian is often left out of the discussion, and he shouldn't be. He was hugely influential, and they actually respect him in that article quite highly, I thought, which was really nice to see. So it's a complex issue, but there is no, as far as I'm aware, there's no evidence of any actual specific appropriation that happened. The idea is that the clown is an important aspect of society. It's not just about entertainment. And in fact, frankly, I think entertainment is undersold in that conversation as well. But it's a complex issue. But in the world, it's a complex issue. In the studio, it's not. It's not.
Thank you for clarifying that, and thank you for your question, Mind of a Snail.
Yeah, great question.
It is, and we have to tackle these things. I know that when I first was introduced to the work, it was introduced to me as something that was, a Canadian form that was a mix of European clowning, American circus, and Indigenous Canadian work. And that right now that doesn't make sense, and that's not how I describe it at all. That's just like you saying from the start, John, that it's not a Canadian form. It's not, you're not a Pochinko clown. And I think we're in a time and a place that we can start to remove some of those layers that that kind of came on at one time. It's not a very old form of training, 60s, 70s, 80s, when it was really hopping, and he was teaching it. Here we are just, a few years later, really, babies still. Any other last kind of questions that you're seeing, Jacqueline? Thanks for looking into that.
Can I read this excellent comment from Barry Belinsky?
Yeah.
Barry says, there's an opportunity here to connect the concepts of breaking free from glass jars, the connection to the land and the stars, the connection within community, and the inclusion of Indigenous communities. Dare to go beyond the accusation of wrongdoing and live by the land acknowledgements we say at the beginning of these conversations, humility in the face of conflict. Yeah. Thank you, Barry. I think that we have to acknowledge that there have been people who, in connection to the work, have, like John said, romanticized, stolen, and used Indigenous concepts in Canadian theater. And how do we grapple with that? And I read as part of my thesis research, I read a thesis that had been written in the early 1990s by someone about Pochinko clown that very much engaged in appropriative writing about it. And she had an interview with Richard and Ian at the end that was really interesting to hear their own words. But the writing about it was not able to recognize that there was appropriation happening. And so we do have to, we have to say, this has happened, and how do we move forward, and how do we make sure that we're not continuing to do it? Thank you, Barry.
I'm freezing again, sorry guys. I know that, I want to honor those words that I spoke at the beginning as well. Are you guys hearing me?
We can hear you.
Okay, good. And part of the land and the stars and the land that we share, especially on Manitoulin Island, when we're in such close proximity to a lot of unceded territory, like the whole island, just beautiful communities. I've been really touched to be there and to feel that energy and to exchange stories and to honor that, all those relations, for sure. Thank you. We have a lot more to say, and I hope that this is the beginning. I think that, like I said, there's so many students out there, and perhaps so many future students as well. So, you know, thank you, everybody for joining us here today. We're going to be doing a few digital videos live on our Facebook page throughout this weekend as part of the Clown Festival, as we can't be doing any outdoor activities under the current lockdown in Montreal. And we invite you to check them out. Tomorrow night, we're going to do a special 5-minute dance party in celebration of 5 years of this small festival. And it is a small but growing festival, and I want to thank everybody who's ever participated, checked us out, followed us on Facebook, applied for the festival, reached out in any way, because this really is a community effort. We've been growing a board of directors that are just so awesome and supportive. So thanks to all my mentors, thanks to you, John, and thank you, Miriam, Elsa, Jacqueline, and Jed.
Thank you,
to the
Vanessa.
future, you guys. I don't know how to end this, because I don't want to end it. No one to leave, right?
It's a toughie.
Do you have any other words to say, John?
No, I'm just really grateful that all this is going on. I think in a lot of ways it's been. I watched the BIPOC discussion from the Edmonton Festival, which was awesome. And it's funny, but as much as I cursed the day that the Zoom thing came to be, the word is getting out there in other ways, and to probably thousands more people than it might have otherwise. So it's all a blessing, and thank you so much, Vanessa and Jed and Katie and Dana Ray, et cetera, the people behind the scenes for doing this. It's awesome. It's awesome. Wonderful.
Love and magic, everybody.